I 34F finally found out why my fiancé wouldn't marry me after keeping me engaged for 7 years, and I genuinely don't know how to recover from what he said. This is going to be long, because I think I need to tell the full story to understand how I let it get this far. I met Ryan, 36M, when I was 25. He was funny, patient, calm in a way that made me feel safe immediately. I'd had a rough few years before him, bad relationships, health problems starting to creep in, the usual your labs look normal nightmare that women deal with for years before someone finally believes them. Ryan believed me. At least I thought he did. He brought soup over when I was sick, sat with me through appointments, rubbed my back during flares when my joints hurt so bad I cried. He looked at me one night while we were laying on the couch and said, "I'm going to marry you someday." I remember crying, because no one had ever made me feel chosen before. We dated for 4 years before he proposed. And honestly, the proposal should have been my first clue. It wasn't bad, it just felt obligated. We were on a weekend trip in Tennessee in this tiny mountain cabin. I thought we were just there to relax. One night we were sitting outside near the fire pit, and he suddenly got really awkward and pulled out a ring box. No speech. No tears. No excitement. Just, "So, you want to do this?" I laughed because I genuinely thought he was joking. But he looked nervous, so I said yes immediately. I hugged him and cried and told him I loved him, and he smiled, but looking back now, there was no joy in his face, mostly relief. Like he'd completed a task. Still, I was happy. I posted the pictures, called my family, changed my Facebook status like a teenager. I was so in love with him. Then the excuses started. At first, they sounded reasonable. I don't want some giant expensive wedding. I agreed immediately because honestly, I didn't either. I said we could do something small, backyard wedding, close family only, simple dress, cheap food, I didn't care. Then it became, well, weddings are stressful. Then, can we just wait until work settles down? Then, maybe we should save more money first. A year passed. Every time I brought it up, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "We already know we're committed. A piece of paper doesn't change anything." And because I loved him, I let it go. By year 2 of our engagement, people started asking questions. Coworkers, family, friends. "Oh my God, when's the wedding?" I'd laugh awkwardly and say, "We're taking our time." But privately, it hurt. Especially because I wanted to marry him. I wanted the life, the partnership. I wanted to stop feeling like I was standing outside the door of my own future. Meanwhile, my health was getting worse. After years of doctors dismissing me, I was finally diagnosed with multiple autoimmune diseases, lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. Some days I functioned normally. Other days I couldn't get out of bed because my body felt like it was on fire. Ryan stayed. That's the thing that confused me the most. He stayed through all of it. He drove me to appointments, picked up prescriptions, heated up rice socks for my joints, sat beside me during infusions watching dumb reality TV. Everyone told me, "You're so lucky. He's one of the good ones. That man loves you." And I believed them. But whenever marriage came up, something in him shut down. Year 3 of the engagement, I tried bringing up courthouse marriage. I said, "Honestly, I don't even care about a wedding anymore. Let's just go sign papers at the courthouse." He immediately looked uncomfortable. Then he laughed and said, "Babe, if we do it, I want to do it right." Which confused me, because he was the one who didn't want a wedding. I asked what right meant. He shrugged. "I don't know, just not now." Another year passed. Then another. At some point, I stopped wearing my ring every day because it started to feel embarrassing. Not because I wasn't committed, but because I was tired of explaining why nothing was happening. The worst part, he'd still call me his future wife. All the time. He'd say, "When we're married someday." My future wife likes this restaurant. You'll be my wife eventually. Eventually. Eventually started to feel like a fake destination. People say to avoid saying never. Around year 6, I finally snapped. Not dramatically, not screaming. Just exhausted. I was in the middle of a flare. I'd been in bed for almost 4 days straight. My joints were swollen. My hair was thinning from medication. I felt disgusting and exhausted and honestly depressed. Ryan came in with soup and sat beside me. And I just started crying. Not even about my health. About us. I said, "Why won't you marry me?" He looked stunned, then immediately defensive. "I do want to marry you." I asked, "Then why haven't we?" He rubbed his face and said, Marriage is that important to me." And I remember saying, "But it's important to me." There was this really long silence. Then he said something that broke my heart even then. "I know this is what you want, I just don't really." I swear something physically hurt in my chest hearing that. Because suddenly I realized I'd spent 6 years waiting for someone who knew the entire time he didn't want the same future I did. I asked him, "Then why did you propose?" And he said, "Because I thought eventually I'd feel differently. That should have been the end. Honestly, it should have. But I loved him. And love makes you negotiate against yourself in ways you never imagine." So I stayed. Another year passed. 7 years engaged. 11 years together total. Then everything exploded 2 months ago. My younger cousin got married. Tiny wedding. Courthouse ceremony followed by tacos and margaritas with family. Simple. Sweet. Exactly the kind of wedding Ryan always claimed he wanted. On the drive home, I finally asked again. I said, "If that was simple enough, why can't we do that?" He stared at the windshield for a really long time. Then he said, "I don't know." I said, "No, seriously, I deserve an answer now." And for the first time in our relationship, he got angry. Not yelling, but cold. He said, "Why are you so obsessed with this?" I remember feeling stunned because obsessed, after 7 years. I said, "Because I want to know why the man who claims to love me refuses to marry me." And then he said the sentence I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. He said, "Because being your boyfriend and being your husband are 2 different things." I just stared at him. Then he kept talking, and I wish he hadn't. He said, "You get sick all the time. You spend days in bed. You can barely work full-time anymore. And if things get worse, being legally tied to that scares me." I genuinely felt like all the air disappeared from the car. He kept going because apparently once he started, he couldn't stop. He said, "I love you, I do, but this isn't the life I pictured. I didn't think you'd get this sick. I can handle being here for you now, but marriage feels permanent in a different way." I started crying immediately. Not graceful crying either, full body sobbing. And this man I'd loved for over a decade, said, "See, this is exactly what I mean. Everything is always heavy." I asked him to pull over. He did. And I sat there on the side of the road, realizing the most humiliating thing I've ever understood about myself. He stayed because being a boyfriend was easy. Leaving would make him the bad guy. Marrying me would make my illness real. He wanted credit for loving the sick girl without actually committing to the sick girl. I finally asked, "So what was your plan? Keep me engaged forever?" And he actually said, "I didn't know how to leave." That part hurt almost more than the illness comments. Because suddenly, our entire relationship felt fake. All those years, I thought he was staying because he deeply loved me. Maybe he was just too comfortable to go. When we got home, I packed a bag. He cried, begged me not to go, said he did love me. And maybe he does. But not enough. Not in the way I deserved. The worst part is I keep replaying everything, wondering how many signs I ignored, because I was so desperate to believe someone could love me despite my body failing me. I moved in with my sister temporarily. And here's the pathetic part. He still calls me, still checks on me during flares, still asks if I've eaten, still says he misses me. Last week he told me, "I think I made a mistake." And I said, "No, the mistake was wasting 7 years of my life because you were too cowardly to tell me the truth." He cried, but I didn't, because I think I ran out of tears somewhere around year 5. Update. I honestly didn't expect my post to get this much attention. I've spent the last few weeks reading comments from strangers telling me things my own fiancé never did. That I deserved better. That being sick didn't make me unlovable. That commitment isn't supposed to come with conditions. I cried reading some of them because I genuinely think part of me stopped believing I was worth fully choosing a long time ago. A lot has happened since I left. For the first 2 weeks, Ryan called constantly. Not angry calls. Not manipulative screaming. Honestly, that almost would have been easier. Instead it was. "I messed up. I was scared. I do love you." I didn't realize what I was saying. He showed up at my sister's house one night in the rain looking absolutely wrecked. Eyes swollen. Beard grown out. Holding flowers I'm allergic to, which honestly felt very on brand for our relationship. He kept saying, "I was wrong. I was stupid. I let fear ruin everything." And for a second, I almost folded. Because 11 years is a long time. Because he knew me better than anyone. Because loving someone doesn't disappear overnight just because they break your heart. But then he said something that snapped me back into reality. He said, "I can change." And all I could think was, why did it take losing me for you to want to? Why did 7 years of tears not matter? Why did begging for honesty not matter? Why did watching me slowly feel unwanted not matter? But suddenly, when I walked away, now he understood. I realized something horrible. He didn't change because he finally valued me. He changed because he finally experienced consequences. There's a difference. The hardest part was that he genuinely seemed devastated. My sister even admitted, "I think he really does love you." And maybe he does. But love without security starts to feel like survival. I remember sitting across from him at a coffee shop while he cried and promised therapy and promised timelines and promised courthouse weddings and promised whatever you want. And for the first time in my entire relationship with him, I saw clearly. Everything was finally on my terms because I had one foot out the door. I asked him, if I had stayed quiet forever, would you have ever married me? And he couldn't answer. That silence was enough. I told him, I spent years trying to convince you to choose me. I'm done begging for something that should have been freely given. He started crying harder and saying, please don't throw us away. And I finally said the thing I think I needed to hear myself say. I'm not throwing us away. I'm finally choosing myself. I left him sitting there, and I cried the entire drive home. Not because I thought I made the wrong decision, but because I realized how long I'd abandoned myself trying to hold on to someone else. It's been about 2 months now. I moved into a small apartment. It's tiny and honestly kind of ugly, but it's mine. I bought cheap plants I'm desperately trying not to kill. I have soft blankets everywhere. On bad flare days, I don't feel guilty for existing anymore. That's been the strangest adjustment. Not feeling like a burden. Ryan still texts sometimes. Mostly things like, I miss you. I wish I could redo everything. You were my family. But I stopped responding regularly. Because I finally realized something. Someone can love you and still not love you correctly. And I deserve correctly. Final update, 3 months later. I wasn't planning to update again, but something happened, and honestly, I think for the first time in years, I'm happy. About 3 months ago, my sister convinced me to join a local autoimmune support group. I didn't want to. I already spend enough of my life thinking about medications and symptoms and exhaustion. But I went, and that's where I met Daniel. Before anyone asks, no, this is not some dramatic whirlwind romance where I magically healed from heartbreak overnight. It started small. He sat beside me during one meeting and quietly handed me a heating patch because my hands were swelling. That's it. No pity. No weird "you're so strong" speech. No treating me like some tragic inspirational story. Just, those chairs are brutal on the joints. I laughed harder than I had in months. We started talking after meetings, then texting, then getting coffee. And do you know what I noticed almost immediately? I never felt like I had to apologize for being sick. The first time I had to cancel plans because of a flare, I panicked. Full anxiety spiral. I started typing this giant apology paragraph explaining I understood if he got frustrated. And he responded, "You don't have to earn understanding from me." I literally stared at my phone and cried. Because I didn't realize how deeply I'd been trained to believe my illness made me difficult to love. A few weeks ago, I had a particularly bad flare. Fever, joint pain, exhaustion, the whole nightmare package. And this man showed up at my apartment with soup, electrolytes, and one of those ridiculous stuffed heating pad animals. Not once did he sigh dramatically. Not once did he make me feel guilty. Not once did I catch that look Ryan used to get sometimes, the look that said, "Your illness is ruining my life too." Instead, Daniel tucked me into bed and said, "You know you don't have to be useful to deserve love, right?" I think something inside me healed a little when he said that. We're taking things slow. But for the first time in my life, I feel like someone sees me as a whole person instead of a future burden. And weirdly enough, Ryan called last week after hearing through mutual friends that I was seeing someone. He sounded panicked. He asked, "So you're really moving on?" And I said, "No, I'm finally moving forward." Then I hung up. And for the first time in 11 years, I didn't look back.